and I am here to share about the topics which is quite close to my heart because I used to be in the past as a developer, so I know how the field of writing many API, many services, and of course after I learned about enterprise architecture, I realized there are some of the so-called things that I should not have done in the past, but I did. And because what happened is that whatever consequences as we develop more and more API in our career and also our passion to provide better value, better services to the business, but we also need to look at the other side of the impact. Basically, is that who are going to maintain our API, how our API can be sustainable. Okay, so that's basically the topic. Of course, I deliberately using the word Hairball architecture versus enterprise architecture in the API realm. So that's basically the topic that I'll be sharing now. Before I begin, let me just give you a perspective on the enterprise architecture debt. And I believe most of you know about technical debt. Technical debt basically is the consequences of not doing the proper way, not doing the right thing because due to the so-called the time constraint, resource constraint, and under pressure. So we deliberately give a green light to proceed to so-called execute certain technical tasks. Whereby, of course, eventually and hopefully one day, me or my colleague or somebody else will fix it. But as you know, in the reality is that there isn't a time of the luxury, there isn't a spare time that we can go back and revisit, right? So at the end, the technical debt is piling up. So now the context is similar, but now it's about enterprise architecture debt. So basically is that about the organization or the team or individual that know that they should have done the architecture, but they don't because maybe due to the same reason, due to the time, due to the pressure, due to the limited information and etc. Okay, so let me just give you the context. What is EA debt? First, there are four perspectives that I'm going to share, and of course, the first one I'm going to talk about from business perspective. So EA debt is the inability of IT to support and adapt business demand. And I think this one is very so-called prevailing. If you ask many the business people that, I think I talk like to 10 business unit, maybe only one said, oh, my IT team are very responsive. But most of them, they said very lagged. So behind and etc. And of course, this is one of the consequences of the not paying attention or not implementing architecture properly, right? So the inability of IT to support and adapt dynamic business. So in the context, of course, IT becomes a showstopper to the business. And this also caused many of the business to lose money as a consequences. The next one from financial perspective. EADEP is the inability of IT team to justify and deliver ROI from any technology investment. I think it's very common that every time we talk to the IT team, they said, we don't have budget. We have limited budget. But if we understand about how they spend the budget, if we have the so-called the map to know that how many you use the budget for the maintenance, how many you use the budget for the new development or innovation. But you'll be surprised based on the research that there are actually more budget allocated for maintenance. So meaning they are actually trying to repay the debt, right? Even without saying that, but we know that something not right. Why you spend so much money on the maintenance? Yeah. So because of that, IT is always a cost center. And of course, nobody want or like to be in the cost center. So if anything, business not doing well, of course, cost center is the one that they are going to first revisit, whether you want to cut or you want to continue. The next one will be from legal perspective. So EA is the contract agreement between business and IT team without having EA as the mandatory requirement. So this is also an afterthought. People think, oh, we just know about the requirement contract. Architecture should be automatically done. But as a matter of fact, many project or many organization, many team, they overlook the architecture. So EA is an afterthought, right? An afterthought means it's the luxury. If I have time, yeah, we do it. And from IT perspective, EADEP is the non-standardized framework and blueprint to build, govern, manage, implement, and run the IT operation. So the meaning of this is that, it's like it's very hard to integrate from one database to another database, from one system to another system, from one API call to another API call. In fact, we can just make a one call, but we have to make 20 call, right? So everything is non-standardized. And of course, as a result of this, we have the island, silo, or duplication of IT system, which is of course lead to the hairball, that the topic about my so-called my presentation. So let's go through one by one. So let me now share with you about EADEP from the business perspective. So interestingly, if you work long enough or you analyze about how the organization are being formed or being structured, so if actually is there a group of people, right? And then sometimes the processes link, some are not linked, and then the technology also, initiated by different department, and the solution also by different department, by different people. And this, of course, cause a friction, a silo, which is, of course, the common term in our lingo called tribal knowledge. Tribal knowledge means something that I keep in my department or in my team or in myself that I'm not willing to share with other people, because perhaps I want to use that as my competitive advantage. I mean, I'm sorry here, I'm not trying to pinpoint anybody, but this is happening in many organizations, right? So as a political so-called power, I need to keep that information so that nobody touch me. Of course, from the individual perspective, they have their own motivation, but to the organization perspective, it's the disaster, because organization need to move, organization need to transform, and knowledge is supposed to be shared across the organization. Yeah, and of course, as a result of that, even in many of our solution, that a business give requirement to the IT team and technology team, the technology model is only focused on the technology itself. And when the solution being deployed back to the business, there are many friction. So this is one of the reason why so-called the EADEP triggered from the silo of the organization structure, and also silo between business and IT. And of course, we can also continue with the next one on the communication. If you see here, quite interestingly, Mr. Tech are speaking also in the same number, 1010, but it's binary, whereby Mr. Business talking in the dollar signs, got the value, right? So this is some sort of the communication that, or miscommunication that has taken place in the last 20 years, and industry is still trying to resolve this until today. Yeah, it's quite interesting. And of course, partial so-called alignment. And this is where the project go live. Then after that, it will take like, the project maybe 6 months, but it takes 3 years to stabilize. Because what happened, like you can see in these pictures, they're trying to shift the railway track to be aligned. Partially aligned, and they launch the product, right? I think it's many examples. I don't have time to share, but I think those of you who work long enough, you have seen this, and they just go ahead with the launch, and after that, take 3 years to stabilize. And this is the reason also, because they don't do a proper architecture. And from the financial perspective, and many initiatives actually are so-called authorized or approved at the individual initiative. And because of that, many overlapping, many duplication, and of course today in the context of the digital, we will end up into the digital island. And digital island, I think, is, I don't know, I cannot imagine the complexity. Even now, the stovepipe or the silo of the system also quite complex to resolve. And now digital island, I think maybe it's like 10 to 20 times or 50 times more complex solving or connecting digital island than if you have a proper architecture to establish so-called a common digital platform. Of course, this is also a very common pictures that you have seen, that many IT project or system, they're trying to connect and integrate, and perhaps they're using the platform called enterprise service bus, enterprise application integration, and etc. But as a matter of fact, this was the plan, but the execution actually is go through API, right? I think, I don't know, I myself felt guilty from my past experience that I've done many of this, right? And of course, at the time, I didn't know about enterprise architecture, so I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. But now I know what I don't know. It's scary. So that's why it's like this topic triggered from the experience that I have, and I think it's something to share so that we don't so-called repeat the same pattern. Right? The pattern, of course, is called anti-pattern. Anti-pattern means something that should not have been done, but people do it. So at the end, we got the API overdose. Yeah, and of course, this will result in very expensive to maintain. Then, of course, the maintenance cost, as mentioned, I think this is just a chart to tell you that eventually the project cost is maybe 1 million, but the maintenance go up all the way to 5-6 million. If we have a proper architecture, maybe the development cost only 1.5 million, but maintenance, if we go down into the chart, will be the other way around, will be the down slope from left to right, not from up slope from left to right. Yeah. And of course, this is also, just now I mentioned that many IT people asking for budget, and always the business people said no money, because they don't see the value and why you spend so much, but you give a return value to the business. Then from the legal perspective, as you can see here, people go into the meeting, they said, oh, I see means, you want the light, I see, I get it, right? But as a matter of fact, what I see is not what you see. Because what I see, I wanted LED light, but you give me fluorescent light. So something that is not aligned, okay? And of course, this is the fact about our IT professional. I think we are the most luckiest profession beside the weather forecast. When we do mistake, when we do so-called delay the project, or we don't even have so-called fulfill the requirement, people still forgive us, right? So this also the fact, as you can see in the first sentence, is that the more we have involved and failed in the last IT project, the more we are wanted to handle bigger, larger, and more complex IT projects. So this is basically the pattern of our world, right? The more you involve in the last big project, they don't care whether you are successful or not, whether you're doing architecture or not, but you are involved in the $500 million project, mean you will be a good candidate to take up $1 billion project, right? From $500 million to 1 billion. So this and the way, of course, snowball to bigger and bigger project. Yeah. And this also the second fact, although we have burned millions of dollars and failed in last IT project, and we are always forgiven, and none of us ever being put in prison. I haven't come across any IT professional I met in the conference. They said, oh, I'm ex-prisoner because I failed in my last IT project. Nobody. Yeah. So we're very, very lucky. But of course, we have to put an end into this. And that's why they got a architecture contract that I'm going to share towards the end, that, everyone is accountable. So, but of course, if you don't have architecture contract and enterprise architecture, all this will be ongoing, right? Ongoing model that, it is in terms of the effort, we may be putting 80% effort, but we only get 20% outcome. Yeah. Then from the IT perspective, the number 4, so how we prevent hairball architecture. And we need to have some sort of blueprint so that we can so-called discuss and talk, and we meet in the same so-called understanding between business and IT. What we are projecting to build or expectation is what we have come up in the drawing board, right? In the blueprint. So this is also very, very important from a practical perspective, and also from IT perspective, because eventually we want to make IT as a profit center. And this, of course, the statement also very, very prevailing, right? Many of us actually think technical, think API, but speak and write XML. Oh, no. Speak and write, but we need to speak and write business. Huh? So many IT people also, they're having difficulty to communicate using business lingo. So now is the so-called wake-up call that for all of us, we can think technical, think API, but we need to speak and write business, because humans speak a business, especially enterprises, speak the business language. And let me share with you on the so-called 4 quadrant between reckless versus prudent. Yeah. So if you are reckless and deliberate, basically we don't see on how EA can become strategic and relevant to us, right? Because basically you don't care at all, and I don't want to know, right? I don't want to know, and I don't care about EA. Or perhaps you know that what is EA framework, meta-modern, notation, process, and governance anyway. Who cares, right? Like basically that you heard about it, but again the same thing, you don't really care, right? So you don't really care, and I don't want to know about enterprise architecture. So these are some of the group or the people that I come across, and of course it's okay. It's a matter of time for them to realize, right? Because when I was younger, 25 years ago, when I was a Java programmer, writing many API, etc., I didn't know about enterprise architecture until in the last 15 years that I'm embraced. And I said, wow, I knew this enterprise architecture 25 years ago, my career today will be different. And this is actually consistent so-called conclusion that when I come across or met with many of the professionals that have already so-called exposed to enterprise architecture, and they realize that, oh, I should have done this when I was much younger, right? So much younger mean in the early 20s or mid-20s, but now they just learn about enterprise architecture in the late 40s or above 40s. And of course, the prudent mean we have to start the transformation now. We will deal with the EA consequences later, right? So this basically creating deliberately is that I know I have a debt, but I need to borrow money first and I will pay back later, okay? And of course, this one is the concept is that I know how EA is so important, but I don't have the luxury of time. But of course, you will never have the time to so-called fix the transformation with enterprise architecture. And of course, the last but not least, talking about now, we know on why we should have adopted EA in the first place, and our organization or our team would be in a much better state, right? So it's just a regret, and of course, this is basically is that they want to start. How do I start the EA journey? Yeah. So what is enterprise architecture? So far, I have not mentioned what is enterprise architecture. I just tell you that enterprise architecture is important, and there are four so-called dimensions that causing the debt to the organization. So this is actually the definition taken from Gartner. The process of translating business vision and strategy into effective enterprise change. Right? So enterprise change basically is transformation. And business vision and strategy is basically where the organization is heading to. And of course, the job architect is by creating, communicating, and improving the key principle and models. So the key principle basically can be used as a governance and also as a contract. So the model is for us to analyze that describe the enterprise future state and enable its evolution moving forward. So enterprise states mean I need to know about the future state and also the current landscape, right? So for us to be able to evolve, to move to the next level or towards a better tomorrow. In the simplest term, EA is used to describe the future state of an enterprise and guide the rapid change. So the rapid change is where so-called our transformation now and to reach the future state now. So basically is that anything we do now, we need to analyze the impact. We need to know our current landscape and what so-called the direction moving forward and how we move to the future, to the target architecture or to target enterprise. So this is basically the concept of the enterprise architecture in the simplest term. So I share this because some of the definition is quite long, but this is quite straightforward and direct to the point. So what do you mean by rapid change? So many organizations today, they are applying the rapid change to reach the future state. So typically they come up with what they call it digital strategy or whatever a digital direction, goal, motivation, driver, and etc. Then after that, they will pass on to the digital transformation team. So what do they do in the digital transformation team? I think those of you who are involved in the digital transformation team, basically, they are no much different than the PMO. They're managing all the portfolio, what they need to run the project, and what are the project bring so-called the business value, so-called, because they understand from the strategy. So then, of course, the question now is people ask, where is the architecture being done? Is architecture done in the strategy or architecture done in the transformation? Of course, if you can see and understand how the project being run today, typically architecture take place inside the transformation. So when that happen, what happened is that the architecture basically have no function. Everything in the transformation project typically has been decided, the resources, the timeline, and all the activity, and the architect just being put there for the sake that, hey, I need to get sign off from the architect. Perhaps I need a solution architect sign off. And basically you can't do much in that situation, right? Basically it's everything restricted, and yet you are tasked to be accountable and you need to answer about your architecture decision, whereby actually our recommendation is that the architecture needs to be done before the transformation. So once you come up with the strategy, you know where the outcome, you know where the capability, you know where you want to go. You go to the enterprise architecture method or the process to understand the gap, what are so-called the business gap, what are the data gap, application gap, technology gap, so that the gap can be realized through the digital transformation project. So instead of the strategy go straight to the transformation, we say that, okay, why don't you go do the architecture first and then let the architecture understand the impact and then come out with all the roadmap and also the task to be done, then execute that through the transformation project. So how does the so-called enterprise architecture connect the enterprise? If you can see here on the screen, there are two pillars. One is a strategy pillars, business strategy pillar. The other one is IT strategy pillars. Right? So the job of enterprise architecture is that they're trying to connect them so that they are being so-called designed or architected uh, by intention, right? It's not because there isn't anything that can happen naturally. We need to really connect the dot. Yeah. So the concept here, if you can see on the screen, is that they call it collecting the dot, connecting the dot, and correcting the dot. And this is continuous cycle. So what happened is that when we connect the business, we can all the business that we are trying to do actually can be so-called put into the layers. So the motivation layers basically are all the KPI of the key stakeholders. Then after that, of course, every stakeholders, they have what they are trying to achieve and how they can present or come out the roadmap, the outcome that they're going to do. This is what they call it, go into the strategy. And of course, strategy need to be realized by the department, by the process, by the capability belong to the business. Yeah. Then of course, technology also playing a critical role here because technology enabling the business to realize the strategy and the goal and the motivation. Yeah. So technology here we're talking about information, application, technology, and the solution that are all connected. Yeah? Because if you see this connecting dot here, many organizations don't have these pictures. Nobody knows how this connected. They have some sort of documentation like business process, but there is business process only the dot in the one of the dot in the business layer. And they say, oh, I got the entity relationship. That's the dot in the information. And I hear the so-called, the framework, like safe framework. That's in the application and a little bit of technology. So there isn't anything that can connect end to end. So enterprise architecture is trying to connect dot across these so-called enterprise layers from motivation, strategy, business, information, application, technology, and the solution itself, and vice versa. Yeah. The reason for that is that with this information connected, with this data connected, we can make a strategic decision very, very fast, right? Typically, we can do it in the minutes rather than in the hours or weeks or months or years for the big organization. So the framework that are used to adopt so-called this enterprise architecture is called TOGAF, and of course now they got the standard version 10. So let me just give you a highlight. So what do we do in the so-called preliminary phase, right? For those of you who are first time exposed to TOGAF, so I think TOGAF is already like 30 over years. It's the proven enterprise architecture framework. I think now is the TOGAF version 10, standard version 10 itself, already almost rewritten and is adapting into the agile digital enterprise. So in the preliminary, basically, we are identifying the sponsors and the stakeholders. And then when we go into the vision, this is where just now, if you remember my earlier slide, where you have the vision, motivation, and strategy, we need to understand the stakeholders, what actually their intent, what are their direction, right? Then from there, we understand what the thing I need to change in my business landscape, right? Could be my process, could it be my department structure. They call it the gap, business gap. Once we understand the business gap, we talk into the information system gap. So talking about application to change, data to change. Then after that, we also need to look at the technology gap. So basically, it's all the infrastructure, could be your cloud hosting, could be your, all type of the network that you need to change. Once the gap is identified, you need to consolidate the gaps, right? They call it in the phase E, opportunity and solution. So this is where you can do so-called gap consolidation, and you can of course intersect with your Scrum Master. Okay, the Scrum Master can come here and look at all the sprint that going to be executed, or what we call it project portfolio. Then of course you can go to the list of project, right? You can assign this to the product owner and who is going to run this particular sprint. Yeah. Then of course implementation is all sprint 1, sprint 2, and etc. And of course you can go earlier to come up with all the epic, the story, and etc. Then of course when there go some changes, because we are living in the dynamic world today, so we need to respond to changes. What they call it FUCA, right? FUCA talk about volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. So, and of course, the most important part, in the TOGAF Standard 10 edition, we need to have a digital EA repository. So this digital EA repository basically is connecting all the phases in the enterprise, all the layers, so that if any changes in a particular element or component or the dot in the enterprise, the digital EA repository will tell you exactly which are the area impacted. Yeah, this is very important, because otherwise you have to ask the people, and the people say, I don't know, I need to ask the other team. The other team say, I don't know, I need to bring another team, and then forever. And it takes us weeks or months just to get simple answer. But if you have some sort of the enterprise architecture framework, you can get the answer quite quickly. Imagine that you are implementing certain API, and you think like, oh, I missed certain information. How do I know that? If you have enterprise architecture, you can open up, oh, about your particular component actually linked to this particular business. These are the processes, these are the function, these are the strategy. Then you can program your API much more so-called efficient, rather than doing trial and error. Yeah. And this is actually can be so-called a model in this such a similar concept with TOGAF using Archimate layers. Right? So I don't know how many of you have been exposed to the Archimate. So Archimate actually is the modeling for the enterprise, how you can actually model the enterprise architecture and all the layers. Right? So here is the example of the motivation and the strategy layers, and how that layers itself connected with the business layer, right? Because eventually, after you know the motivation and the strategy, you also want to know which are the processes, which are the department, which are the function, which are the product, which are the services, which are the contract that related to my motivation and strategy. Then from there, of course, you can look into your application, technology, and the information data layers, right? So when we capture all this landscape, so basically is that when we go into the Toga phase EFG, there will be a so-called implementation required. This is where we are going to execute the change. This is where we are going to execute the project, because we got so many gaps, and we need to so-called apply that using of course, our API and etc. Okay, so the model actually is the Archimate is the language that so-called used to model all the layers. And of course, they got what they call it here. If you can see a motivation layers, the business layer, the strategy layer, they got the composite layer, they got implementation migration layer, they got technology element, they got physical element, and also got application element. And interestingly, there are about 12 relationship that you can use, yeah, to model all the relationship. And of course, can also do a cross-reference natively with the UML. Likewise with the entity relationship diagram and also your BPMN. So these are the most three commonly Archimate will so-called cross-reference. Of course, you can use another language, but typically these are the most popular one, because sometimes we can adopt another meta model, another language, but it's not popular. And of course, we are trying always to apply with the standard, so that our design, our model can be portable and also easily maintainable. So what happened now when we start paying off the debt from the business and financial perspective? Of course, we have a happy relationship between business and IT, and business and IT team are sharing the same vision and expectation. And of course, all our IT project can generate value. Without realizing it or not, actually all the initiative or the activity that we do, even when you write the API, actually can generate money. But who claim that credit? If we don't have the enterprise architecture, of course, the credit will be claimed by the marketing team, by the sales team, or by another team. Whereby the IT team, we just completed this project. But if we understand enterprise architecture properly, we can claim and share that credit, because actually we are enabling organization to make the money, right? IT as a profit center instead of a cost center. So these are the concept on the how do we prevent EA debt from the legal perspective. So of course we can use the contract, architecture contract. So architecture contract actually take place when we take place in the phase A, when we have a so-called agreement, or we capture the information with the stakeholders, and then we got the sign off by the stakeholders. So basically stakeholder understood that these are the vision and this is what organization moving forward, yeah, the target. Then after that, in the phase B, C, and D, basically when we define the business architecture, information, application, and the technology architecture, we also need to have the sign off and approved by the relevant stakeholders. So the stakeholders business process could be the business unit, but the application could be application head, or could be the CIO, and could be the CTO, and all the various stakeholders need to understand. We need to get their sign off. Then, of course, when we go into the project implementation, we need to get the sign-off from your PMO, project management, and of course, we need to apply what they call it minimum viable architecture. Then when we go into the implementation, we are so-called integrating with the agile team. Of course, we apply the minimum viable product and we have the contract with the implementer. So if you outsource, then they need to sign the contract. If you your team internally implementing the project also need to have some sort of the contract. And of course, finally, when the thing get released, and you need to make sure that the governance are followed so that we can do a so-called retrospective, and of course, to make sure that all the changes applied according to the agreement or the contract. And in terms of the structure of the EA team, and I think some of you are already, if you have a so-called certified in the project management, or you are following project management activity closely, in the last 3 years, actually the content of project management already shifting towards agile team, towards agile concept. So basically is that enterprise architect work closely with the team leads or scrum masters and agree on the architecture contract. That's very, very important. Then after that, of course, architecture owners work closely with the product owners to govern the solution architecture implementation. And solution architecture blueprint shall guardrail the agile sprint and ensure sprint backlog do not turn into technical or architecture debt. So at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we don't create debt, and whatever debt and plus interest, we need to pay back. Okay, so what is next? Of course, we can just continue living in the debt, business as usual. It's of course incur cost or debt principal, just like a financial debt that need to be repaid. And of course, if your senior management discover this, they be not happy with us. And of course, incur interest payment. Not only that the principal amount, but interest itself in the form of extra budget, escalating costs, and many issue, perhaps a customer complaint and many other things. Of course, IT increases the complexity and also high maintenance costs in the long term. And IT forever cost center. And hope none of us agree with this reckless. And let's move on into the so-called recommended, which is prudent. So we need to start embracing enterprise architecture early. Of course, they got the digital EA platform and tool, and then focus on capability development efforts, and realize how digitally connected enterprise model can help organization to be more efficient and more competitive. And start paying off the debt, right? Plus principal, including interest through installment. So installment means every project that we embark, we need to make sure that we can incrementally pay back, the principal plus interest amount in every new digital transformation initiative. Not only focusing on the scope, but we are trying to fix the so-called the debt that has been created in the past project. Not necessarily created by you, could be by another team. But now let's not decap who created that. But now every time we are given opportunity to involve in the one project, we need to make sure that we are paying back that some of the interest and the principal. Right. With that, I think I want to thank you for the attention and also the opportunity given to me. And I think I wish everyone a success, and we will meet again in the event in the near future, and also in the online. Thank you so much.